There is the B line, and back that way is the Smiley Face Bridge. On this side of Rogers is the near north side of downtown, and we are heading in that direction. This is the connecting passageway that leads to my old neighborhood. In penetrating my old neighborhood, this guy walked through my camera shot. It was not until I started piecing together this Bloomington vlog that I actually saw that he looked almost identical to myself when I was a young man living in this neighborhood. I mean, this guy could pass for my doppelganger. Like I said, when you take up a camera to tell one story, very often a stranger story will intrude. My first encounter with a doppelganger occurred my first full day in Bloomington back in 1986. I got on the elevator with this tall Dutch student, and we both did double takes. Back there is the Standard, which is probably the largest student complex on this side of town. It is humongous. It stretches for several blocks. But I wanted to come here at Grant Street. This is where someone was murdered back in the 1990s when I lived over in this neighborhood. They were killed on these railroad tracks in this location. And I doubt very seriously that anyone who lives in the Standard knows that when they look out their window, they're looking at a murder site. As you can see, my old neighborhood, there's a lot of unused land around here. In many cases, they have torn down the houses that used to be on the street and have not built anything to replace them. I think that is partly because the university owns a lot of property over here on this side of town, and so it's just mostly a student ghetto. For many people who have autism, they do not know that they have autism, and the more high-functioning they are, the more this disconnect will resonate. I lived in an efficiency apartment in this house on the near north side of Bloomington for over a decade. I moved into it shortly after I graduated from Indiana University, which is nearby. This location is my third residency within the span of a year and a half after I graduated. All locations are within a quarter block of this house. This demonstrates how terrified I was to venture into the world. I had recently turned 30 in 1988 and had secured an art gallery in Chicago over that summer. My life had the appearance of normalcy and momentum, but really I was light years away from any of that. The efficiency apartment described in Chapter 1 of Icarus Transfigured occupies the front window on this house, left as the viewer sees it. This house no longer has tenants. The evil peeping Tom neighbor described in Chapter 1 occupied the apartment rear of mine. The common hall bathroom we shared splits this house in two. I did not believe I had any option but to live in the bottom half of society after I graduated. I had no funds, no capital to relocate. Most of the students in my program were from the East Coast, and so they returned home to find better job opportunities. Again, I did not have that option. I was stuck here, but one could choose a worse place to get stuck than an idyllic college town. But when you have autism, every place you wind up requires a survival strategy. Many plots in my dreams and nightmares revolve around this house. I dream I still live here, though illegally and without a lease. Sometimes I hide in the wall, and my evil peeping Tom neighbor is still in the house with me. Security is essential for the autistic, even in dreams. I was otherwise happy here because, well, I was still young at the time, and I was making art and comics. Hormones was also a big driver. I had several crushes on coffeehouse baristas, and I even had a few romances. Moreover, this near North Side neighborhood provides a lot of places to walk, including the IU campus and shady residential streets. Student housing is everywhere around here, so while I was living in this neighborhood, I drew energy off the students. I was happy to stay here because I wanted to stay close to the place that gave me so much joy as a graduate student. I ended up getting a part-time job at the Indiana University Art Museum, which is also near this house. I tried to stay safe, but fate is no respecter of shady neighborhoods. A young student lived in a connecting apartment building to the rear of my house. I only saw her once on the porch when she was retrieving her mail. Over the following Christmas break, she returned home to Massachusetts and was brutally murdered on New Year's Eve. Perpendicular to my street, in one of these houses, several male students died when an electrical fire killed them during the night. I remember walking past this house some weeks later and seeing a young man sitting on the porch steps, clearly heartbroken over losing his friends. Around the same time, and maybe related to this tragic event, someone set fire to a shed behind this house. The woman who lived in the upstairs apartment of my house and I stood on the sidewalk and watched this fire as it began to creep over power lines towards our house. Fortunately, the firemen turned up and put the fire out. Grand Street, where the person was killed on the railroad tracks, is no more than 2 blocks from my efficiency apartment. My first near-death experience took place 2 blocks in the opposite direction when I was robbed at gunpoint by a car that drove down this alleyway right here, and the person on the passenger side stuck a gun out and took my wallet from me. Now, I think it was that alleyway. So much has changed over here since I lived in this neighborhood that it's really hard to say. Or it could have been this alleyway right here where I was mugged walking down the sidewalk. I feel like it was closer to McCullough School, so it's more likely that this is the alleyway I was robbed in. But the house that used to stand right here, I think, has been torn down. I started the first draft of Icarus Transfigured in 2003 in this house. This was the year before I was forced to move out by the new owner, who had other designs for this location. Aiden Gage escapes this house, but only in one sense, where he flees figuratively to the shady neighborhood that lies to the east.